Good afternoon or evening, everybody. Chef Suzanne and I welcome you to week 6 in CU 122. Another fine live session. So great job, everybody, on week 5. We had a fairly good submission rate. A little bit concerned because we did have a little bit of a drop in our on-time submissions as a class, but a lot of you did absolutely fantastic submitting early or on time, and for that, thank you very much, Chef Suzanne, and I really appreciate it. I did want to make a quick mention to everybody. The world of culinary arts is a lot more than just cooking. It's a lot more than the food on the plate, and all of you with the education that you're getting are slated to move up the ladder and become the executive chef or the sous chef or the one in charge of the kitchen eventually. Which means that your focus grows beyond just food. And as a part of professionalism, it is important that we communicate properly, that we present ourselves by submitting early. The things that you do is what your staff is going to do, because they will mimic your impressions as you go along. Chef Suzanne, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I will actually have a bit of a good example of that. This week, I'm not sure what was in the air this week. We got a lot of later submissions. Normally by Monday, I'm like, I got like a bazillion assignments to grade and keeps me busy. And this time I was like, where's everybody? And so all of a sudden I got them all yesterday on time, but still, anything that came in, I had just a few assignments come in Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, everything came Tuesday. And that affects, me being able to use your photos for my PowerPoint, which I know you all enjoy and I love making. So, that's just another really good example. And yeah, we are an industry of time. Everything is all about time. Everybody's time is valuable. So, you want to make sure that you're always keeping one eye on that clock, whether it's a clock or a calendar, always keeping an eye on it.
Yep.
It will come in handy.
Excellent words of advice. Just remember this, for when you get into industry and you do become an executive chef, we like to proact before we react. If we can get it done a week early, we get it done 2 weeks early. And that is a sign of a successful chef. Those who procrastinate will have challenges. It's like that old age thing. If you're scheduled at 5 o'clock, you should be there dressed and ready to work at 4:45. It's the guy that shows up at 5:05 that we have problems with. So carry yourself in a professional fashion. But enough of that. Let's move on to, let's take a look with what Chef Suzanne has for week 5 in CU 122, because I know there were some awesome submissions. Thank you, everybody, for reaching out. A lot of questions this week about different flours and everything else, and I really appreciate that. So, Chef Suzanne, what you got going on?
Ooh, this is a good week. This is one, I think I say that every week. This is one of my favorites. I very much enjoy these foods that we did this week. So here's my presentation. Let me share here. All right, can y'all see that? All right.
Omelets. Ooh, nice pancakes.
I know, and not only do her pancakes look delicious, but her batter looks excellent. So that was one thing. If there was issues with the pancakes this week, it was more from over mixing these pancakes. If you over mix that batter, it can all of a sudden not get so fluffy, because I did see that a lot in comments, like, hey, my pancakes didn't come out very fluffy. They look more like flat crepes. So if everything was measured right, you may have over mixed.
Nice.
Yeah, and that nice. I mean, that is about as yellow as you can get. They're adding a bit of brown on that, nice and set in the middle, looking super great.
Great color. Wow.
Right? Holly was like, I'm going to go above and beyond, and it looks like some fresh berries, maybe like a compote of some sort, a little whipped cream, or maybe ice cream.
That makes you want to go get pancakes.
You do not even know the half of it, Chef. I'm telling you. It's so hard to grade these. You just don't know. Look at this.
Great job, Scott. Look at that.
Right? This is what I get to see, people. I get to see this every day, all day long from all of y'all.
Wow. Right. I really appreciate Joseph on the, I really appreciate that nice smooth texture on the pancake. That's fantastic.
And the same thing with that beautiful light yellow omelet.
Uh-huh.
Jerry also with that beautiful interior of those pancakes, nice and fluffy and set.
Great job.
And Joshua, that's one of the ones where I'm like, okay, I'm wondering if I've got time to run out for breakfast or find a diner that's open to serve, because that looks so delicious.
Great job.
And now this is one of the ones, Carlandria here, this is one of the photos that I can honestly, I promise, I saw this and I had to stop grading because I was like, I'm so stinking hungry. I've got to go get something to eat. And this is one of those photos I was like, I got to stop because it just looks so good. Makes me instantly hungry. Again, here with these pancake pictures. Y'all are killing me with pancake pictures. Not enough for me to make pancakes, but I did make an omelet this week. My omelet was filled with smoked shrimp because I love to make smoked shrimp. So we had actually made smoked shrimp this weekend. So beginning of this week, my omelet was filled with smoked shrimp, pepper jack cheese, and guacamole.
Nice.
But not to end it there, we also had this, last but not least, we had some tacos. Because if y'all remember, I had this prepare your assignment. Chef had this, and down at the bottom I put make and eat tacos because tacos rock. Well, I had several students take me very literal, and they even made tacos, and so I figured I had to share a few because I just loved that they were inspired by my little list to make and eat tacos. So, and there was others. These are not the only two. There were more. So I love that. So I think that's the end of my presentation. So I think that's the end there for me. Let me get off the screen here.
That is exciting. This class is rocking and rolling.
Yeah,
I really appreciate it. I know a lot of those pancakes had great leavening agents in them, and they leavened very well. So great job for understanding that and organizing it. And then I also really appreciate those omelets. Those were just fantastic looking. So great job, class. You guys are rocking the house, man.
I'm a huge egg eater. I eat eggs pretty much every day, and omelets are my weakness. And so these omelets just really got to me this week. I had to go in and make one when I just dig around the fridge looking for whatever yummy stuff is in there to make an omelet. So yeah, they did a really good job.
I know. I think after this class, I'm going to go make myself an omelet. Yeah. I wish Uber Eats would deliver omelets. That would make my life easier. Yeah, great job, everybody. That is fantastic. I hope everybody really picked up on the technique. Chef Suzanne mentioned some really critical stuff there when she was talking right now. She talked about the mixing of the pancake batter. Remember that. It's very applicable to this week's assignment as well with the development of the glutens, the proteins that are found in the flour. If you overmix those, you're going to develop too much gluten, and which will affect your leavening, and it will also affect the toughness of the pancakes. So you want to be really conscientious of that. And then it looks like everybody did a great job understanding the eggs, nice, low, and slow. So great job. Thumbs up, everybody. Hey, check it out. We are halfway through the course, everybody. Week 6 in CU 122. It goes by fast, doesn't it, Chef Suzanne?
It does. And actually, before we move on, how did everybody feel about this week's assignment? Like, what did you all think? We haven't asked, but what did you all think of this assignment? I feel like there was a lot more, everybody seemed a lot more comfortable this week. Their narratives were full of good information, and obviously the plating was awesome. So how did all of you out there and everybody? Hey, y'all, what'd y'all think? They're so quiet, Chef.
I know.
I don't see any hands. Nobody wants to.
But Tonika, why don't you share? You're sitting there smiling. Go ahead. Let us know what you're thinking.
I really enjoyed the assignment this week. I'm not used to all the additional ingredients in pancakes because I was raised with all-purpose flour, eggs, and buttermilk and roll. But then now to incorporate the salt and things like that, that was really different. So I did enjoy and adding the baking soda. So it was like every time I do an assignment, it's an experience that I enjoy, or, you know, sometimes I'm looking at it going, oh, this isn't going to taste good. And it tastes really well.
Yeah. Great comments. I'm glad you brought up the part about the salt. Salt is a very common ingredient in breakfast cookery and in desserts as well. You'll find that a lot of desserts, or most desserts, actually do call for some measure of salt. That's because salt is fairly high in monosodium glutamate, which naturally opens up the palate, which enhances the flavor. So That's a great comment. Who else wants to share something about week 4 or week 5? Anyone else? What about Sharon? Sharon, what's going on? There you go.
Yes, I enjoyed the assignment. When I was cooking my eggs, I was like, are these eggs gonna ever get done? Because I was cooking so low.
Yeah.
I'm used to cooking with higher heat, so following the instructions and everything, it all worked out okay. But I enjoyed the assignment. Every week.
Oops. Uh-oh. There you go. You're back.
Okay. Now, I always enjoy the assignments because I learn something new every week.
Awesome. Great comments. Yeah, and the heat is such a critical factor when it comes to the egg cookery. As your mastery increases with practice over time, you'll be able to adjust that heat level to increase your production a little bit faster. In industry, we'll keep that flame pretty close to high. We put out about 15,000 BTUs per burner, which is British thermal units. And when you're doing breakfast, you'll be right around 10 to 12,000 BTUs. So the more practice, the faster you can go. So excellent comments, ladies and gents. Thank you very much. And once again, thank you for rocking the house on week 5. And here we go into week 6. I love the halfway point. It's so exciting to see everybody's growth and see how far everybody's come. Chef Suzanne was mentioning just a moment ago about how the narratives looked full and fresh this week. And I think that's really exciting. That's a sign that people are starting to loosen up and really move forward. Isn't that right, Chef Suzanne?
I absolutely agree with that. I know sometimes the narrative can be a little intimidating, and I cracked down a lot more in this course than they did in 101 because, as you're moving forward, you're doing a lot more dishes and you're doing a lot more. So really want you to kind of start building up those skills because the narrative is more than just part of your grade. Yes, it is part of your grade, but your narrative helps you to be able to better explain food, recipes, techniques to your guests and your employees one day. So it's just building up those skills. So when you just answer a question in your narrative with, nope, no problems, or nope, didn't have any expectations. Well, you did have an expectation. Maybe you've never made this dish before. So if you've never made pancakes before, what did you think might happen based on the recipe, the ingredients? Or maybe you have made pancakes. How did you think this would be similar? Or how did you expect it would be different? So make sure you're really looking at everything that you do and looking at this more as just it's just part of my assignment. Look at it more like what that narrative can do for you to help build your skills.
It's one of the hardest things to do that will take you the farthest in your career. As we spoke about at the beginning of the live session this evening, once you become a chef, it's a lot more than just cooking. It's a lot more than just food on the plate. You can't make every plate yourself. You can't sit there and tell every cook how to do everything all the time. You have to learn how to communicate these measures, and that narrative is going to help you. And so take Chef Suzanne's words of advice because they're going to take you far in your career. Ladies and gents, let's move on and take a look at what we got going on. Hey, anybody, we're at the halfway point. If you're concerned about your grade at this point in time, reach out to me. Let me know. My number's on the right-hand side of the class page. You can shoot me a text. We can work something out to help you out. Our goal, Chef Suzanne and I want to see everyone pass this class. It is critical. So let us know. We're here to help you and support you. So take advantage of it. Make sure that you're posting attendance at least every 4 days by completing an activity on the class page. All you have to do is follow the prep list that we give you each week in this class. All you submit a weekly assignment, complete a knowledge check, or watch the live session archive. That'll post attendance for you and you'll stay current. So if everybody could do that, we would really, really appreciate it. And then this class rocks. And I'm not, who is that, Chef Suzanne, down there at the bottom left-hand corner?
That's John Bon Jovi, Chef.
Oh,
that's how the song goes. Whoa, we're halfway there. Whoa, living on a prayer. Look, you just made me sing in live session, Chef. You just made me sing.
I'm way too young to know who that is.
No, you're not. You are totally old enough.
I'm not lying very well, am I?
No.
Ladies and gents, on our next slide, we're not going to watch this video right now. But I would encourage all of you to watch this. This presentation is posted directly beneath your research materials on the class page. It is a great video about the American Culinary Federation. For those of you that are not familiar with the ACF, I highly recommend that you join the organization. It is the only nationally recognized organization that certifies chefs in the United States. We have approximately 15,000 members, coast to coast, and 8 other countries as well. It is a fantastic opportunity to get in and network with fellow culinarians, and you'll get more jobs in the ACF than you will anywhere else because you'll know people. So take advantage of it. It is a great organization. Ladies and gents, let's take a look at week 6 in CU 122. Research materials, pay close attention. There's 2 real valuable videos in there, one about muffins, one about biscuits. 2 knowledge checks. Don't forget that you can complete or take those knowledge checks as many times as you like, and only the highest score will stick. Thank you very much for being in attendance at our live session this evening. If you're not, make sure you watch the live session archive. Those students that attend or watch the live session are the ones that continuously, consistently succeed. And then, ladies and gents, this week in the kitchen, we're working on muffins and biscuits. That's a big, wait. Biscuits are a big problem because I think everybody's family makes the best biscuits. And it's kind of a real family regional thing here in the United States. And so let's really focus on the technique this week. That's really what the important thing is as it applies to industry. Your prep list this week, it's on your class page, folks. Attend or watch the live session Wednesday. Read the research materials, complete both knowledge checks on Thursday. That's tomorrow. And then read the assignment, create a prep list, and purchase your mise en place on Friday. Bang your assignment out Saturday and Sunday. Plenty of time. And then resubmit your assignment as suggested by Chef Suzanne on Monday and Tuesday. And Chef Suzanne, oddly enough, there's a mysterious message underneath the Monday, Tuesday. What is that?
Well, I kind of felt like that the tacos were such a big hit that maybe I'm going to start throwing some more of these in there just so give folks some ideas on what to prepare for dinner. So I was thinking, since we're still in summer, I'm going to add in here, maybe make some burgers or hot dogs and maybe some potato salad because we are still in summer. So, and if you do happen to make any of those items, feel free to send me a picture. I would love to see it. Chef Warren also likes to see these because we were pretty excited about getting a bunch of taco pictures this week. So just throw that out there. It's not part of the assignment, but just a little bit of fun.
I want to challenge this class because you know what? Something tells me this class can do it because there are a lot of really good students in this class. I want to see a Sonoran dog, and then I want to see somebody's most awesome hamburger. I really want to see these pictures. Because I've got this weakness for hamburgers. I don't know what it is. The other day we went out for breakfast, the family and I, 7 a.m., I had a cheeseburger. I just can't resist. So let's do it. Great. Thank you for adding that in, Chef Suzanne. That was wonderful. Ladies and gents, going back to our presentation, week 6 conversions right here for you. It'll really help you with your weekly conversions chart. Hey, I know it's kind of tough and it's kind of a hassle having to memorize all that information. Like the narrative sheet, right? There's a couple of things that are going to separate you from the remainder of the cooks in the kitchen, and that's one of them. So learn your conversions. Ladies and gents, let's rock and roll into week 6. We're going to jump into the kitchen now and learn a little bit about muffins and biscuits. Before we do that, though, we need to discuss glutens just a little bit. And glutens, in a rudimentary fashion, are the walls or the structures to the house. Right? Bread has bubbles in it, right? Something has to hold that structure together, and that would be the gluten. So gluten is a family of proteins that are found in wheat, rye, spelt, and barley. Now, before we go too much further, you hear a lot about gluten intolerance out there in the market, and there are people that are gluten intolerant or don't care to eat gluten. If you take 100% of the people that don't consume gluten, only 2% of those people actually have what we call celiac disease, where they are not able to digest the protein gluten. So they cannot have it. It becomes very painful when they consume it. That is called celiac disease. you must be very, very respectful and very, very careful when preparing food for those folks. However, the other 98% of the people generally are just for personal reasons, which we don't know what those could be yet scientifically. So it's just kind of a trend right now where you see a lot of people that are avoiding gluten for one reason or the other. So gluten is found in, or strands of protein. There are two different proteins that are found in wheat, rye, spelt, and barley. One of them is glutenine and the other one is gliadin. And when you take gliadin and glutenine and you mix them together with water, you form strands of protein, and those strands of protein are called gluten. So glutenine and gliadin mixed together with water, kneading them, you create strands of protein. The more you mix your flour with water, the more protein you develop, the stronger the structure becomes. So you need to think about it in a realistic fashion. If you are making a French baguette, right? Have we all had French baguettes out there? Long, tough French bread, right? If you bite into it, it's chewy, it's crunchy, it's crisp on the outside. You don't want that in a muffin, do you? That's because that French baguette has a high amount of gluten. Whereas muffins and biscuits are very low in gluten. We want them to be flaky and crumbly and very, very tender. So when we're making our batters this week or dough this week, be extremely careful not to overmix, right? So that is a story about gluten. Does anybody have any questions about gluten? Thoughts, concerns? Chef Suzanne?
I don't think so, other than just we hear a lot about it, but understanding a little bit more about what it is, because gluten, like you said, gluten intolerance and gluten allergies, and you're hearing more and more about it, or people are just choosing not to consume a lot of gluten. So understanding where it comes from and what it does is important. It really is.
That's a great comment. Throughout your career in the kitchen, you're going to see these emerging trends that develop, and then they kind of go away after a period of time. After a period of time, man has been consuming gluten since the inception of time, right? So it's something that we've been able to work with. However, recently in the past 20, 30, 40 years, farmers have begun switching over to what we call GMO wheat, which is genetically modified organism, right? So they modified the wheat slightly so it'll grow better, it'll be more disease resistant, and they have better production. Well, a lot of people are unable to digest that GMO wheat, so you see a lot of people that aren't consuming gluten like they used to, and that could be one of the biggest concerns. So the next thing we're going to discuss, we're going to switch from gluten to flour, because the level of protein that is found in a flour will affect how much gluten you can develop. This past week, we talked about pastry flour or cake flour or all-purpose flour or bread flour. All of those flours have a very specific use depending on the level of protein. Cake and pastry flour, for example, only have right around 9% protein, okay? So what that tells me as a chef, when I'm making something that needs to be very tender and gentle, I'm going to use cake or pastry flour because of the low level of protein, which tells me I will generate or make less gluten. All-purpose flour has a protein level between 9 and 11%, right? So that means, yeah, you can make pizza crust or some types of bread with it because it will develop a fair amount of gluten, and it will be fairly dense or fairly strong enough to hold the structure. And then bread flour is where we get into the upper levels of the protein, and the bread flour has anywhere between 11 and 13% protein. So when you go to mix it, you're going to develop quickly a lot of gluten, a lot of strands of protein in there that are going to create a lot of structure and give you a tough, chewy product. Does everybody understand that? Any questions about that? So cake and pastry, oh, Sharon, what's up?
Yes, I have been trying to find pastry flour and I have not been able to find it. I did find wheat pastry flour, but not the regular pastry.
Okay. You can, pastry flour will have just a little bit less protein than cake flour. They're pretty close. I think that it's less than 1% difference in general. So cake flour is generally a pretty good substitute for the pastry flour. And you should be able to find cake flour pretty easily. I know that Amazon and Walmart online both carry pastry flour. Does that help? Okay. All right, ladies and gents, so just real quick, cake and pastry flour, 8-9% protein. So when you mix it or knead it, you'll develop less gluten. All-purpose flour has anywhere between 9 and 11% protein, which means you'll develop a medium range of gluten. Then we have bread flour, which is between 11 and 13% protein. So you'll develop a very high level of gluten, making a tougher product. Anybody else have questions? Chef Suzanne, did I get the whole gluten thing?
You did, and I'm pretty sure we'll have to kind of go over it a little more next week as people kind of as we get into even more into baking. We normally talk about it again. For those that are kind of like, whoa, I think I got it, but I'm not sure. We will talk about it again. Chef will go over it again because you definitely need to understand that there is a difference in the protein amounts of these flours. And so they're, contrary to what a lot of people think, they're not always interchangeable. There are some that are very similar, but there can be a really big difference for certain uses, or certain recipes are going to call for something very specific. So just be aware.
Good judgment. Tonika, what's up?
Good evening, everyone. I'm concerned with the bread flour that the recipe is calling for biscuits, because I'm used to biscuits being light and fluffy. And if we're going to use the bread flour, they're going to be hard like biscuits from Popeyes or something like that.
No. Hopefully by the end of the class, we can walk you through that. So you have to remember one of the most important things that we just talked about in reference to the development of gluten, especially with bread flour, is the amount of mixing that you do. So the less you handle the product, the less that you're going to develop the glutens. When we go to make muffins, for example, you want to just mix until combined. When we did pancakes last week, remember we could leave a few lumps in there and that was okay, and we sifted everything so we would have to minimalize the mixing. Well, that's to reduce the development of glutens. So that's what we're working on. Any other questions, ladies and gents? All right, everybody. The category of breads that we're going to be working on this week are referred to as quick breads. Quick breads are leavened, and when we say leavened, we mean that's what makes them rise, right? In traditional breads, the leavening agent is yeast. Yeast, when activated with water between 90 and 100 degrees, gives off carbon dioxide and alcohol. And it takes time for it to ferment and give those gases off. We are working on quick breads this week, and we will use leavening agents such as baking powder, baking soda, that activate immediately and give off carbon dioxide quickly. So that would be the definition of a quick bread. It's literally exactly what it says. It is a bread that you can make very, very quickly. And there's a funny guy on this picture here. I'm not sure who that is either. I'm not old enough to remember who this guy is down here on the bottom. But examples of quick breads include, it's a lot of cakes and brownies, cookies, muffins, biscuits, scones, Irish soda bread, which I absolutely love. Cornbread is also considered to be a quick bread. And those are breads that use baking soda, baking powder, egg or butter as a leavening agent, a bread that you can prepare very quickly. Chef Suzanne, who is this fellow down here?
That is Jim Carrey, and I believe that's one of the Dumb and Dumber movies, actually.
Oh, I've never seen one of those.
You just don't know your celebrities very well, Chef. I feel like you would fail any sort of quiz about celebrities.
And then there's another picture up here of a cat that I see you have banana bread. I also like banana bread.
Yes.
So
I found that and I was like, that is just the cutest little fat cat ever. So
By the way, ladies and gentlemen, it's kind of cool in this industry. You will end up cooking for or being next to or being with some of the most amazing celebrities over your career. I could tell you stories that'll blow your mind. My last position, I was a director of food and beverage, and we had a server that called in sick one day. So I had to be the waiter for the Doobie Brothers. And then I turned around the next day and I'm having coffee with Kevin Costner. So, I mean, it just never stops. And I've had the opportunity over the last 3 decades to cook for presidents and first ladies and everybody else. So it's really kind of cool to be involved in all that. Excellent artwork there, Chef Suzanne. I love that.
thank you. I do my best.
All right, ladies and gents, we did talk about this last week. As a matter of fact, we had the same slide. But we are going to talk briefly again about leavening agents, just to help everybody get a friendly reminder of what they are, because it is something that we work with frequently when we are in industry. So when we refer to the term leaven in reference to breads, quick breads or regular bread, we're talking about the rising of the bread, right? So the pancakes this past week were leavened, right? An unleavened pancake becomes a crepe because it's flat. There's no leavening agent in there. And a leavening agent can be a number of substances that's incorporated into batters and doughs. We just talked about yeast, which is right up here. This is active dry yeast. Later on, we'll get into the different types of yeast. But active dry yeast, you add water between 90 and 100 degrees, and you mix it and dissolve it, and it'll begin to give off alcohol and carbon dioxide. However, the alcohol cooks off at 176 degrees, so it's no longer there. The biggest question that we get, though, is the baking soda and baking powder. What is the difference? Why do we use the two different ones? Baking soda is sodium bicarbonate. When it is mixed with water and heat is added, it gives off carbon dioxide. Okay? So that means it's really critical when you're making your muffins this week or biscuits this week that your ingredients are cool, right? As cool as possible. Because if they're warm, that baking soda is going to give off the carbon dioxide, and it only does that for so long, right? So if you activate your leavening agent right away, your gases will run out and your breads will come out flat. I don't know how many of you made pancake batter this past week, and then you look at it, a few minutes later, it's all bubbly, right? Has that happened to anybody out there? You make pancake batter, and all of a sudden it gets bubbly. That's because you've activated your leavening agents and it's beginning to give gas. So we have baking soda, sodium bicarbonate. It does not require an acid. It requires an acid to activate, okay? So for example, if you're making an ingredient that has a dairy product in it, such as milk or butter, there's lactic acid that will work with the baking soda to activate. When a recipe does not have any type of acid in it, it will call for baking powder. Baking powder is sodium bicarbonate, baking soda, with the addition of cream of tartar or tartaric acid. Tartaric acid is what helps the sodium bicarbonate give off the gas when mixed with warm liquids. Does anybody have any questions about that?
Chef, we have a great question in the box that
Sure.
I think they need to hear your answer to. Is baking soda and baking powder the same across the board, name brand versus no name brand?
Generally speaking, yes. I cannot vouch as far as all labels are concerned. Calumet is the big brand of baking powder in industry. It comes in a large red can. I'm sure Chef Suzanne has seen hundreds of these, and you'll see those frequently. And then Arm & Hammer is the big label for baking soda. However, a lot of mainline carriers are now carrying their own label. So it could be a Cisco label, it could be a US food label. So they are generally, I haven't noticed too big of a difference in quality because it is a single item product. right? Sodium bicarbonate is sodium bicarbonate. Does that answer the question? Dennis, what's up?
Yeah. So you said no. If there's no acid needed, then it would be baking soda.
No acid. When there's no acid in the recipe, generally it's going to ask for baking powder, because baking powder is baking soda with the addition of tartaric acid.
Okay.
Tartaric acid was discovered in the 1800s at the bottom of wine barrels. It's what sticks to the wine barrel at the bottom of wine production, and they discovered it many years ago, and that acid helps the sodium bicarbonate off gas.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Dennis?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gents, any other questions before we move on? Chef Suzanne, you have anything to add to the leavening agent category?
I don't think so, other than how important they are to make sure that they're fresh. Because I know that I myself have run into an issue where I may not use a whole lot of baking powder. So I get the little can that's been in the back of the cupboard for a really long time and then wonder why my recipe came out wrong. So this, when you're making things, double check and make sure all of your ingredients are fresh. Make sure that they're not expired. Make sure the temperature has been controlled with them. So if power went out or they ended up in a storage facility for 6 months, they're probably not very good. So invest in some fresh.
Absolutely. And leavening agents are light sensitive, meaning that they are sensitive to UV rays. When they are sold, they are always sold in light proof containers, such as boxes or dark colored jars or sealed bags. That's because the UV rays get in and they break down the sodium bicarbonate or the yeast. So that's a great point. Thank you very much, Chef Suzanne. A couple of other leavening agents that you will use throughout the course of your career can be eggs and butter as well. Butter gives off steam. Eggs naturally leaven when they cook. Ladies and gents, muffins. We're going to watch just a minute of this. I want everybody to see how this is done, and then we'll discuss it quickly before we move on to biscuits.
The variety of ingredients. One of the keys to achieving great muffins is being careful to not overmix the batter. Muffin batter should actually be lumpy, not smooth. Overmixing muffin batter results in toughness, irregular shapes, and tunneling.
Overmixing, just blend your ingredients until incorporated. That's it. Don't stand there and whisk them for an extended period of time. The more you mix, the more gluten, the tougher they become. Oops.
And tunneling, which are elongated holes inside the muffin. Blueberry muffins are a classic crowd favorite. The blueberries add a wonderful flavor and color, and the sweetness of the batter complements the fruit in a delicious way. First, we're going to sift the dry ingredients together. We've got flour, sugar,
The
salt,
sifting is essential.
and our baking powder. And again, we just want to make sure that we're evenly dispersing the salt, the sugar, the baking powder in the flour. Not sifting, you'll have a much more dense finished product. So put that aside. Then we're going to combine our wet ingredients. So that'll be our eggs, melted butter,
Not hot, just melted.
vanilla, and our milk. We're just going to whisk this just to combine. One of the unique aspects of the muffin method is that it's always going to use a liquid fat. So in this case, it's melted butter. If you choose to use shortening, you would also melt that. I'm going to take the dry ingredients. Again, we're going to put a well in the center. We're going to add our liquid. And we're going to want to use a spatula because it's more gentle. If we use a whisk, the whisk is going to whisk all the volume right out of this mixture.
And develops more gluten.
As you can see, I'm going around the sides of the bowl and kind of up and inward with it as I mix. We're going to keep doing this till we don't see unincorporated flour, but it'll still have volume. Then we're going to add our blueberries. If your blueberries are a little wet, you can always toss a little bit of flour in them. This will help keep them from sinking straight to the bottom of your muffins.
Okay, so those were the critical steps right there. For this week, if you are using frozen blueberries, make sure that they are thawed out completely and do toss them in a little bit of flour. It's really, really important because they break down very easily during the baking process. Make sure you do not add them until the very last minute, right? Because if you add them early in the mixing process, they're going to break down and your muffins will not rise because of the additional liquid in there. Chef Suzanne, do you have any words of advice for the frozen versus fresh blueberries?
If you're gonna use frozen blueberries, yes, like Chef said, let them thaw, and then I don't want to say squeeze the tar out of them and turn them into mush, but kind of gently squeeze some of the excess liquid out of them, because sometimes they thaw out beautifully and sometimes they thaw out like little blueberry sponges. So if you just kind of give them just a little kind of a squeeze to get some of that extra moisture out, that's normally a good thing, and then toss them in with that flour, because somebody actually was asking in the chat about using fruit, and fruit is a great thing to be able to stir in, but they do tend to want to sink to the bottom, and that flour in them kind of helps to keep them suspended. Also, like Chef in the video were just saying, don't over mix. So if I look at your photos and you're mixing up your muffin batter with a whisk, the odds are good you've overmixed. It should be just very gentle. You know, if you think about the difference between like a muffin and a piece of bread, right? If we take a muffin, we can easily just crumble it into pieces because that gluten was never really built. They don't have those strands. Whereas bread, we've all seen bread being made, right? And they just beat the snot out of it, and it's just everywhere. And that's what forms those strands of gluten. So you want to be really gentle. You don't want to overmix. So just make sure you're following the recipe really closely. Chef also just mentioned something, which was the butter. The recipe is calling for softened butter, I believe. I say softened butter? Melted butter, I'm sorry. The recipe calls for melted butter. So make sure you're actually melting the butter. Whereas when you're making your biscuits, which you'll see in a minute, you're not going to use melted butter. So whatever that recipe says to do about your butter, whether it's melted, chilled, softened, you need to be paying very close attention to those little words like, oh, it's just butter, it doesn't matter. Makes a huge difference in your finished recipes. Because I don't even know if, Chef, have you said it yet? Baking is an actual legitimate science. There are people that go to school to major in Bakeology. It is a legitimate science, just like chemistry, because there are chemical reactions. Like I know Chef has talked about chemical reactions, and they are happening. So, you know, it's one thing to kind of adjust, you know, maybe a little bit of a sauce where you can add in a little extra this or a little extra that. It's not as easy to add in a little extra this and a little extra that when you're dealing with chemical reactions. So you have to be very respectful of those chemical reactions going on in baking. Sorry, Chef, I just like totally overtook you there. I'm sorry.
I loved it. I loved every minute of it. That was great because that was some really good advice, honestly. And you know what? And this is a perfect segue to lead into this next subject. This week, of all the weeks in CU 122, it is critical that you follow this recipe to the T because the technique is what we are trying to get you to learn. If we allow you to make substitutions with other berries, fruits, and herbs, and all these other things, the batter is going to come out differently. It's not going to be the same because this recipe compensates for the moisture level in the blueberries. Chef Suzanne just said that this is a science, and she is 110% correct. Once you start deviating from the science is when you end up with disaster. So this week and this week, please make sure that you focus 110%. If you want to get funky with your muffins and try something a little bit different, like a bacon cheddar muffin or something like that, make your muffin batter, take a portion, add some blueberries, bake it off, submit that for your assignment. Take the remainder of your muffin batter and get as creative as you want. We want to see those pictures because we really enjoy that, but we need to make sure that you understand the technique. Ladies and gents, let's take a quick look at our biscuit recipe. Oh, look at this. Mind your own biscuits. Where'd that come from? That is awesome.
I thought that was super cute too. I feel like I need a t-shirt that says that.
That was a good one.
Biscuits are a form of quick bread. Instead of using yeast, they use a chemical is to have small pieces of fat coated in flour and dispersed throughout the dough. When the fat melts in the oven, the steam captured in the little pockets gives lift and rise to the product.
So the fat is the leavening agent.
This means that using cold butter is one of the most important aspects of this method.
Cold butter.
Preheat the oven to 425 degrees. So first we're going to start with sifting our dry ingredients together. Start with the flour. And our salt. Our chemical leavener. And our sugar.
Sifting, critical, adds air to the product.
Put them all in here too so that they're evenly dispersed. Don't want to have a clump of baking powder sitting on top. We want it evenly throughout the bowl. So we got our sifted flour. Then we're going to take our cold fat, which we've cut into cubes.
Make sure your cubes are even as well.
Coat the butter in the flour, and then start breaking it up into small pieces until it looks like coarse cornmeal. So, you can also use shortening if you want. Just make sure that you chill the shortening, just like we did with the butter. Get our fat dispersed in our flour. We'll make a little well in the center of the bowl. I'm going to take the milk, pour it right in the center. We're just going to slowly combine the two. Just till about just combined. I'm just going to dust your bench a little bit. And
You see how flaky and crumbly that is when she's taking it out of the bowl?
Product. Just gently and fold it together.
Just until it's one piece.
Then we're going to roll out the dough. Be real gentle with your rolling pin. Right? We don't want to overwork the dough, but about 3/4 of an inch thick. You have your cutter. And you do want to place them as close as possible.
So ladies and gents, at this point, if you don't have a cutter, there's a bunch of different things that you can use that you probably have laying around your house. And I know Chef Suzanne likes to talk about this, but I've used everything from cups, cans of tuna. Once you take the tuna out, you can cut both sides, obviously, out of the can, and rinse and sanitize it real well. What else have you seen, Chef Suzanne?
Glasses or cups in your kitchen, nice little ones. Ramekins, like some folks have kind of slightly larger ramekins in their house. Trying to think
Coffee
of what
cups.
else. Huh?
Yeah.
Oh, coffee cups. Yeah, like some smaller coffee cups. Absolutely. Some folks even have ring molds that they use for other things, and those work beautifully too because essentially they're cutters. So there's just tons of different things you can use that you already have in your kitchen that are similar to the size and shape. But the recipe, I think, is going to call for 2.5 inches. So if when you're making your biscuits and you end up cutting them a lot smaller or a lot bigger, you're definitely going to have to watch your time on your cook times. That's going to be more important than ever. And I will say this, and I'll probably say it again before the end of this live session. Times in a recipe when you are baking are just basic guidelines. So if a recipe tells you you need to be, that takes 10 minutes to make your biscuits, you should be checking them at 5 to kind of give you an idea. So don't leave them in for 10 and then go back and wonder what happened, why are they burnt? Because maybe your oven temp isn't quite where you think it needs to be, so it may be off a little bit. So I always think halfway through whatever the cook time is, that's when I check it.
That, and I know this is going to sound weird, but atmospheric pressure does come into play with leavening agents. So depending on the elevation of where you're at will affect how those leavening agents work. For example, if you're at very high altitude, you're going to have additional atmospheric pressure. So you're going to have to add a little bit more leavening agent, a little bit lower. It's all scientific. There's all these things that come into play. Some key things for the biscuits. One was the temperature. We got to make sure everything is cool when we're working with it. Cubes of butter need to be cut evenly. Sift your ingredients to ensure that there's no lumps. Bring it out of the bowl when it's still kind of flaky. Bring it together until it's just one piece. She mentioned it. Minimalize your rolling. The rolling is really effective at developing glutens, and we don't want those in this. Otherwise, you're going to have tough biscuits. And then you can use whatever kind of round device you have to cut it out if you don't have any type of pastry cutter. Sangria, what's your question?
Yes.
Hi.
Hi, how you doing?
Good.
When we're sifting, can we just use our whisk to sift our dry ingredients, or do I need to get a sifter?
You can, and that's fine. But one of the things that the sifter does is incorporate air, and your whisk is not going to do that.
Okay.
And if you don't have a sifter per se at your home, use a colander or other similar device, and that will do the same thing.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
We had a really good question in the box because the recipe calls for folding the biscuits, I think it is. It talks about folding it 3 times. So just remember that you need to be following the recipe, not the video. Now the videos are there to kind of give you additional support and reference and information, but make sure you're always following the recipe. So look, because there are different recipes floating around, because there is also a pastry program. So some of these videos are multi-purpose. So it's just more instructional, kind of give you an idea of what you're looking for, but make sure you're always following the recipe.
So that's a great point, Chef Suzanne. What that book fold does is create those layers of flakiness. We also call that a laminate dough, where we fold it out, then we fold it in by thirds, right? So we fold it out, in, and then gently fold it out again. And that creates layers of that flakiness in those biscuits that we all like to see. So make sure you follow that recipe. Taking a look at some of this equipment that you'll be working with in industry. Muffin pans come in various colors, and that does affect the amount of time that they do cook. But you'll notice here that we do quite large volumes of muffins. At home, you probably do a dozen at a time. In industry, we'll do about 36 per tray, so it's quite a bit more. This week, if you do use a mixer, paddle attachment, but we do prefer that you use just a spatula to bring those ingredients together. Stand mixer. This is about the size of the mixer that sits on the floor in the actual restaurant. The bowls are so big that they actually have wheels because you can do quite a bit of food in there, so be careful. Mixing bowls, we don't use glass bowls in industry. They're all stainless steel, so be very careful about that. This little device here is about 6 inches wide and about 4 inches tall, and it has a concave edge on it, and I highly recommend everybody invest in one of these because the more you bake, the more you'll need it. It's called a bench scraper or a bowl scraper. One side you'll scrape your workbench, the other side you scrape your bowl. They cost about, what are they, 40 cents a piece, Chef Suzanne? They're very inexpensive things, but as you're working with ingredients, you run these along the inside of your bowl, and it gets all the stuff that's stuck on the side, the flour that didn't quite get incorporated, helps you make better recipes. Scales, very prevalent in the restaurant industry. We use those for virtually everything. Ladies and gents, let's take a quick look at our muffin recipe. As we saw in the video, it's very, very important that you sift all of your dry ingredients together to add that air. Lightly mix your wet ingredients, make a well, and then you're going to pour your wet into your dry. Bring it until it's just together with the spatula, no whisk necessary. And then your blueberries, if they were frozen, make sure they're dry, grow well, like Chef Suzanne was talking about. Make sure you get any excess moisture off of there, and then coat it with just a little bit of flour, and then into the batter right before you bake. Same thing with the fresh blueberries as well. And then your muffin pan, if you're not using what we call pan liners or muffin, what's the technical name for those, Chef Suzanne?
Talking about the little papers.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny that you don't know the name either, because the last place I worked, I must have spent 2.5 hours one day trying to figure out what they were called, and I think they actually had them referred to as liners.
Yeah, that's why I just use the term pan liner, because
but there are different names, different companies, different vendors use different names for those. Some will literally call them cupcake papers, cupcake liners. So just got to get familiar with the fact that there may be multiple names for the same exact item.
Yep. And if you don't want to use those this week, that's fine. Make sure that you lightly grease your muffin tin, flour it, remove all excess flour, and then add your muffin batter. You only want to add your muffin batter up about 3/4 of the way in the muffin pan, because your leavening agent will take it up and give you that nice crown that's on the top. If you overfill it, it won't crown as nicely. So be conscientious about that. Does anybody have any questions about muffins? To ensure the doneness of the muffin, you're going to take a toothpick or a skewer. You're going to insert it. And if it comes out clean, that is an indication the muffin is done if you followed the recipe. Tonika, what's your question?
I see on the recipe it says milk, just like the last recipe for the pancakes said buttermilk. So this is whole milk?
Whole milk.
Okay.
Yeah, generally in the industry, we're not going to use a lot of 2% or skim milk for recipes. So as a general rule of thumb, when it refers to milk, it's going to be whole milk. Okay. All right, ladies and gents, let's take a quick look at our biscuit recipe. And we see that it's calling for bread flour and pastry flour. Once again, the pastry flour, if that's an issue, go ahead and use cake flour. You're going to sift all your ingredients together just like you do for the muffins. And then you'll add that butter. I like to add the butter in smaller cubes. Make sure that the butter is cold, and also make sure that it is consistently cut. And then you're going to work that into your flour gently, crumble it up. It's going to look like a real coarse cornmeal, right? You don't want to dissolve it. You don't want to completely mix it. Just make sure you're going for that coarse cornmeal look. Then you're going to add your liquid, bring it together barely, put it out onto the onto your work surface, lightly floured, and then do that book fold where you roll it out and then fold it in and then roll it out, and then you can cut. Once you cut, you're going to roll it out to about 3/4 of an inch, and then it'll go onto a sheet pan, half sheet pan with some parchment paper. No need for pan spray. They're not going to stick. They've got a pretty high amount of fat. They're going to bake at 425 degrees. One of the ways that you can tell that they're done is that nice golden brown look on the outside. Does anybody have any questions about biscuits?
There's a good question in the box, like in this particular recipe, why both bread and pastry flour. And I think one of the best ways to kind of explain this is, you know, kind of like Chef talked about, different flours have different kind of proteins. But if you think about, because I actually did not know you could do this. If you think about when you go to the gas station, there are different amounts of, what's that stuff called, Chef?
Octane.
Octanes, thank you. And so when you look at the octanes, because apparently there actually is a formula that if you if you want a 36 or I don't even know the numbers of the octanes, but let's say you take a 32 and a 36, you can combine them together to get a 34, so it's got a different octane level. So it's kind of the same kind of thing. The different flours have different strengths. So it's asking you to kind of combine different types of flours to look for a certain kind of strength that isn't really met by one or the other. So you're looking for kind of the benefits of both. To kind of, that's why they're having you, and depending on the recipe you use, you may have some that are other, so you may come across a recipe that only uses all-purpose. This one just happens to use these mixtures so you can kind of see how they operate, how they work. So hopefully that made sense, because I just totally used a gas reference when I know nothing. I'm totally a girl, but I did know about that a little.
You know that you've just totally messed me up next time I go to buy gas. I'm he's sitting there staring at the pump for hours now. Yeah. All right, ladies and gents, that's a great explanation, by the way, and that's honestly very true. So, ladies and gents, your week's assignment, obviously the self-identification photos. Make sure we're looking professional and we're staying on top of it. Sanitation, extremely critical. Mise en place, nice, neat, straight, and organized. We got to remember, the more organized you are with your mise en place, the faster you can go. And that's one of the things we look for in industry. And then we have the required items for each of the 2 items that we're preparing this week. And don't forget your narrative sheet this week. Ladies and gents, a couple of critical things that we talked about in tonight's class. Overdevelopment of glutens will destroy your muffins and your biscuits. Temperatures are extremely critical when working with leavening agents, right? So if you have room temperature milk, or if you have warm butter, or whatever the case is, it's not going to react quickly or properly. Muffins, make sure that they're nice and cool so it doesn't react to the leavening agent. Make sure that your butter is nice and cool when you're making those biscuits so it doesn't melt and release the liquid, because the butter is one of the main leavening agents in that recipe. It's extremely critical. Make sure that you follow this week's recipes to the T. It's very, very important. Make sure those blueberries get a little bit of flour to help keep them up in that dough. It's really, really important. Ladies and gents, are there any questions before we wrap up class?
We have a good question in the box that I'm sure others may be wondering about, is can they cut the recipe in half for both like last time? And kind of glancing at the recipes, it is possible, but for this assignment, it would make some of your portions so small that it would actually make it harder to come up with the right recipe. So, converting, like we just talked about, converting a recipe that has 4 chicken breasts to one that has 2, super easy. Well, again, when you're dealing with like all these chemical reactions, it can make a big difference. So I would try to follow these ones pretty close to the amount. I would just follow them. What do you think, Chef?
I would agree. Scaling scientific recipes such as baking can be a little bit difficult, and it doesn't always scale exactly, and I can't tell you without doing it myself in person right there. I would recommend, if you're worried about making 32-ounce muffins, make 15 4-ounce muffins, and this is where that conversions thing comes into play. The biscuits, it's 22-ounce portions, I think. Maybe make 10 4-ounce biscuits, and then wrap them up. Both those items freeze exceptionally well. And as well, we know that we have a lot of creative folks in this class, and we really want to bring that creativity on. Cook what you need to for the assignment, set the other stuff to the side, and get funky with it, and do some creative stuff. So
and don't forget, your family, your friends, your neighbors, and your coworkers will love muffins and biscuits. Just throwing that out there. Nothing wrong with making 30 muffins. You'll have lots of 29 friends, so just throw that out there.
And you're not going to make anybody mad by giving them a blueberry muffin, trust me. Yeah. All right, ladies and gents. Hey, thanks for a great live session. If anybody has any questions, needs help, or you need help, make sure you get a hold of us. We are here to help you succeed. Take care, everybody. Have a great day.